Oh, I think we're good to go. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning and being here. I've had the opportunity, I think, twice during my time on staff with the Board of World Mission to be with Home Moravian in January. And both of those times happened to be over my wife's birthday weekend. One of them was a Sunday when her birthday fell, and one right before. So being able to join virtually, while it would be wonderful to be in the same space, it means that I get to be around for her birthday this year as well. So the benefits of these things. So what I'm going to do in a few minutes is I'll bring up a presentation that we have, and it's an overview of the work of the Board of World Mission. Then, we're going to jump into some of the scriptural, the Great Commandment and the Great Commission as a basis for our work, kind of scriptural grounding. And then I'm going to walk you through certainly the MDR, the Moravian Disaster Response work that's happening in Nicaragua and Honduras specifically, but also not to lose focus on the ongoing coronavirus relief work that's also been happening. And then just an overview of some of the places where we're doing work. So we have 4 weeks, and Brother Bishop Chris Giesler is going to continue from here, and he should be joining us fairly soon. He was doing a presentation at Central Moravian Church this morning on their gathering, and then will be joining us here as well. So I'll do the screen share real quick and bring up the beginning of our presentation. Right. If that's working well right now, you should just see a rainbow colored background for me, and double checking that you're seeing one slide and not two. Is that correct? You just see the Moravian.
That's correct. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I think just as it's always appropriate when we gather, the first thing that we usually say to folks is welcome. And this is welcome in Swahili, karibuni, and this would be the plural, welcome to you all. And I like to start off with that as a reminder that this would be the word used for welcome to the most Moravians gathering on a Sunday morning like this in the world. So even as there's Moravians around the globe, the great majority of them would speak Swahili as their first language in Tanzania. And it's wonderful to think, even now as we're gathering virtually, I think fondly of the kind of last moment in 2017 here, where the greatest number of Moravian areas, so not necessarily the greatest number of Moravians in total, but the most areas represented from around the globe, the four corners, if you will. This was in South Africa in 2017 at the Mission Conference. So even more than a Unity Synod or Unity Board meeting, prospective mission areas and places where Moravian work is taking place or could take place in the future gathered together to talk about our call to service and to mission and that grounding in our faith. And how wonderful that was to have a program there in South Africa for 4 or 5 days that was translated into multiple languages, and just how focused and wonderful that worship and time was together. And once again, it was just a reminder of our similar, of our similar words and calling, right? So you'll recognize in the middle, our Lamb has conquered, let us follow him. The words that we would see often in Moravian churches. In the US, I've seen it in Latin as well. But as you go around the world, you might see it in any of these languages. So this is a non-complete list of languages spoken around the Moravian world. And if anybody can read the Nepali, please feel free to jump in now and read it out loud. That's one language I have not been able to read down there at the bottom without the Arabic characters. Moving forward, the Moravian work is divided into kind of stages of development. And so this is how the Moravian Worldwide Unity has decided to organize itself. And so it starts off in a second here, I'll show you, from mission area to mission province to unity province. And that's as an area starts out. It's looking to begin as a Moravian work and ministry, and then grows in its development. And so here, that's defined by, on these next 3 slides, the paragraphs are up top, and these are all things I could send later if anybody wants to see more. But this comes from the governing document of the Moravian Worldwide Unity, the Church Order of the Unitas Fratrum, or COUF, C-O-U-F. And every 7 years, when there's a unity synod and representatives from the different areas of the Moravian work come together and represented, that's just like having a provincial synod where new resolutions are passed for the governing body and work. And so this is from the most recent edition of COUF, which was the 2016 Unity Synod. And since Unity Synod happens every 7 years, the next one will be happening in 2023. But the mission areas, and I think it bears repeating here, are places where some sort of Moravian ministry or outreach is taking place, and they're classified by their stage of development. And when a work is identified as an area where mission work is taking place or could take place, it's designated as a mission area. So it's kind of this beginning, like anywhere where we might see God moving, where we'd like to connect and offer some supervision. That's where we claim mission areas. And you can see the 16 current mission areas in the Moravian world here. And if you notice on that list, I'll say a bit more, but Peru and Sierra Leone are the ones that are supervised by provinces that are part of the Board of World Mission. But each of these areas has a full unity province that helps support and guide them on their way. And the way that I like to describe that supervising relationship is much like a baptismal covenant. So when a unity province or Board of World Mission is taking on one of these areas, it's not necessarily just administrative. So certainly we help with some of those functions and organizing the church, but really it is about promising to help guide this new mission area as a part of the global unity, to help raise them up in the faith and understanding of our history and our theology and how this work can come together. As an area begins to move on from a mission area, they become a mission province. And there are 5 mission provinces you can see there: Burundi, Cuba, Czech Seignoret, Honduras Traditional, and Labrador. And what describes this is, you can see in that paragraph, just a bit more taking on their own roles of administration, of their own roles of guiding their faith and doing the development of their folks. And so not necessarily needing as much supervision, but being accompanied by a province and walking alongside them. And finally, next we have the unity provinces. And so mission provinces are accompanied in their process of development by unity province. But then unity provinces are governed by synods, just like the Southern Province, Northern Province in North America, and are either self-supporting or have an approved strategy for moving towards that goal and are faithful to the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. And so I'll just put a note there. I'm going to continue with the polity piece, but recognize in our governing documents of the Moravian Church, the Worldwide Unity, one of the things that distinguishes us as being ready to step out as a unity province in our work and mission and guide others is being faithful to the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. And that's what we'll return to in just a moment to focus on our biblical foundation and mission today. But here is a list of the current 24 unity provinces. And I'll give you just a minute to, without me talking, to read through that list. As I had talked about the large number of Moravians in Tanzania, you can see from 17 to 23, those are all provinces broken up within Tanzania. And so these areas, like as the church continued to grow, it made sense to separate them off into, you say smaller units, but they're still quite large number-wise of individuals, but in one place. Similarly, then, you have things like number 5, the Eastern West Indies, which includes quite a few of the Caribbean brothers and sisters across many islands. And then also number 6, the European Continental Province, which includes 8 countries in Europe. So there's quite a big difference in geography and size and connection, even as the stage of development is reached by these 24 Moravian areas. The final part of our just kind of how we organize ourselves is unity undertakings. And these are ministries that are supported by when a province sends in their offerings to the unity, helps support it financially, but also spiritually, that we are all take part in, help guide and care for, pray for, etc. And that includes the Star Mountain Rehabilitation Center. This is a ministry, if you haven't heard of it, in Ramallah, Palestine, a school and educational offerings and like job training programs for people with developmental disabilities. And it is just a wonderful ministry in that place. And the Border World Mission, through special donations and through some of our budget, helps support paying for a speech therapist specifically to be on staff and to work with children and adults with speech disabilities at the school. And then the last one also being the Unity Archives in Heron Hooch, remembering our history and keeping that well preserved to help guide us into the future. I promise my slides will have more than just words on them in a few minutes here, but I think of those subset of all those places where Moravian work is going on, the Border World Mission, certainly we have connections and partnerships and work with folks all over, but these are the areas we focus on. We're made up of representatives to our board of the Northern, Southern, and Alaska provinces of the Moravian Church. The partner provinces that are listed there are full unity provinces. These are long-standing relationships, and specifically Honduras and Nicaragua, which we'll talk about a bit more, have been focused on quite a bit during the COVID relief times and now during the hurricane response. The mission provinces that we walk along with, Labrador and Cuba, and the mission areas of Peru and Sierra Leone. So all of that, that's a lot of areas to work. And so what do we do and kind of what's our purpose? And to try and put that into words is always a difficult thing when, you have all the scripture of the different ways that Christ calls us to love God and love our neighbors and put tangible pieces to that. But we've tried to sum it up this way. The Board of World Mission builds relationships through mission outreach and mission engagement to be faithful to the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. So again, from Kuf, taking that language of our biblical call of the Great Commission and the Great Commandment, and using that to help describe the Border World Mission, that our purpose as well. It's derived from those biblical foundations. And then using mission outreach and mission engagement, I'll explain in just a bit, but really about building relationships. So in all of this, it's about how do we connect with people, connect with God, and connect them with all together. And we think about mission outreach and mission engagement like this with the Border World Mission, that one feeds into the other. So Brother Chris Giesler, who I believe has joined the call now, I don't have his little picture on the screen with me, is the Director of Mission Engagement for the Border World Mission. And so that's this part of our work that focuses mostly towards our constituents in the congregations of the provinces that make up the Border World Mission. So doing educational efforts with congregations and folks that want to know more about what's going on in the Moravian world and the mission world, helping to give opportunities for mission support when we have things like the MDR and opportunities to help support those projects, and then also to be a part of the service as well. So not so much in 2020 with travel restrictions, but helping to set up opportunities to travel and things as such. And then on the mission outreach side, it's our work with our global partners and constituents. And so this makes up a lot of our programs, and I'll put a bunch, they kind of fill in on here. And you can see how these different programs, one feeds back into another. So we might train a mission team that goes to Peru and it helps with the leadership development of this growing mission area, or teaching about Moravian history or theology. And that comes back and has helped with the discipleship of folks who feel called then maybe to go to seminary and continue service and work in the church, and things kind of go round and round, and they help complement one another. In all of these things, we want to be Christ-centered. We want to encourage mutuality, and that means just having a strong partnership, so it's not one-sided and just dictated by us, but really understanding our partners. And then moving towards these stages of development, a sense of self-reliance on being able to do their own training in context for their pastors, being able to set up missions from their own context and reaching out, because certainly the Border World Mission is not the be-all, end-all in the Moravian world or the Christian world of being able to reach all the folks that Christ is calling us to. So once again, mission engagement and mission outreach, these two pieces coming together, you could similarly replace it with the Great Commission and the Great Commandment. So I'm going to just take down the screen share for just a second as I talk about this piece of our work. That should in there. Make sure I can find you all. Thank you. So the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, I want to just kind of read the two, and I would say sections of verses. And this is a Bible study, a little bit of what I'm going to be using, put together by Brother Chris Giesler, that our board of directors had as kind of pre-meeting devotions to help us kind of guide our work as well. An important thing is you can sum these up, right? A lot of times you would say the great commandment being love God and love your neighbor, and then the Great Commission, go into all the world. But recognizing those summaries, we always want to take these things in context. So let me first read to you from Mark 12 and the verses leading up to and then including the Great Commandment. One of the scribes came near and heard Jesus and the Pharisees disputing with one another. And seeing that Jesus answered them well, he asked them, "Which commandment is the first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." So what's interesting to me about this is really when we say, what is the great commandment? That's a singular term. I like words, I like puns, I like playing with words. So I recognize immediately the great commandment in the singular sense. And then Jesus puts two things together and says, there's no other commandment greater than these being plural. So in the Old Testament, right, there are, and in kind of the Hebrew scriptures, we hear a lot about the 10 commandments, but really there are 613 different rules, regulations that could be considered commandments by God as well. And so that's a lot, right? And so if you had a list of 613 and someone says, okay, which one's the best? Well, when Jesus responds to this Pharisee, this test, it was a little bit like having a children's sermon and saying Jesus is always the answer, right? If you say Jesus, you're on pretty safe ground. Here it would be similar to say, well, what's most important? Well, certainly love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And he probably could have stopped there and people wouldn't have argued much with that idea. But it was novel at the time to also include it with the second part and say, but let me tell you this, it's also about loving your neighbor as you love yourself. And the idea being that if we love God, but we don't live that out in our world and in our connections with one another, we maybe don't understand our relationship with God quite so much. We may not be living it out to the fullest extent that we're called to. And so that's something to me that is really instructive of understanding. Sam Gray always liked to talk about it. He was great with visualization of the relationship here, like going up and down between God and ourselves, and our relationship here with one another, and certainly using that as a visual and the idea of the cross and a reminder of the two things coming together and how that's the symbol of love in our world. So I guess I would like to just make it participatory for a second for folks. The question I would have is, so when we hear about in the Moravian, like kind of our sayings, in all things love, so in essentials unity, non-essentials liberty, all things love. When you hear this, the great commandment to love God and love your neighbor, and that idea in all things love, like how does that make you feel about what are the things that we need to do to demonstrate and show love to our neighbor, right? Like what are kind of the tangible actions? How do you see those things tying together? Or how do you see that idea of in all things love and the greatest commandment fitting together?
You might want to treat other people as you would want to be treated, or as you would want your family to be treated, and usually often that means that you would be treating them with love and respect and caring and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
To listen to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think you're talking, Mally. I could see you listening, but I think you're muted.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Trying not to be judgmental in how we approach people who live in a different society than ours.
Mhm. That's great. Yeah, all these things I think are wonderful, right? Because it becomes pretty easy to box ourselves off, right? Of, oh, which neighbors do I get to choose? I like the one that helps me, shovel my walk on this side, but the one whose dog runs in my backyard on the other side, maybe that's not the neighbor that I need to love quite as much. Or how do we make sure that we're able to listen deeply, right? When we have a message to share, how do we make sure that we can hear what other people are thinking and their perspective and where that comes from as well? Absolutely. So moving a bit on to the Great Commission, this side of it as well. Here's from Matthew 28 and verses 16 to 20. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, to the end of the age. So the part I like about the Great Commission, obviously there's this great calling that we're called to go into the ends of the earth, to go into the world. And you have this idea, right, this energy that comes with missions quite often of like being ready to go, saying, here I am, Lord, send me. But taking it in context, there's a reminder that Jesus called the folks, the disciples, together first to the place that he needed them to be, to send them out. And also the idea of when you go out, you're not leaving Jesus behind, right? Jesus says, and remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. And so it's an interesting thing in missions to both sides. Not forget that when you're packing your bags, you're not leaving Jesus at home and going carrying out the mission without Christ being with you, but also remembering that Christ is already in the place where you're going. And the author Rob Bell talks about missions being almost like being a travel guide. So like Rick Steves, maybe, when I worked for the Lutherans, he was a big name because I think he's a Lutheran as well. But going through these different places and pointing out where you see God like manifesting in an area where folks may not have been able to see that before. You can offer a unique perspective when you come in missions as well. But the idea that God is before us and working for us as well. I want to get into some of the pictures of it, but would definitely take any questions at any point if somebody wants to jump in or where it might be on the Great Commission commandment as well. But I think the best way I can kind of show how the Board World Mission like puts these things into action is by offering some of the pictures that we have of our work kind of currently going on.
Justin, how are things going now during the pandemic with the board and outreach and going?
Sure. So we've put a hold on all like mission team travel at this point. I mean, and even the staff, we're kind of evaluating when it's going to be safe for us to travel as well. Some of that will depend on the vaccine and things. But that's been a major challenge for our work. In Nicaragua, there were 2 bishops that were elected at a synod, and they haven't been able to be consecrated yet because of you need travel from an outside province to come. Some areas in Sierra Leone that I'll show a picture later, we had done their first national conference in 2020, and we're going to follow that up in November of this year with some additional leadership training and working on developing their constitution to move them towards being a mission province. And some of those things have been on hold. But at the same time, we've had lots of partners that are doing great work right where they're at, adapting their models. Some of them are meeting online via Facebook or WhatsApp, just like we are this morning for Sunday school, and kind of adjusting as the virus is different in different places. So somewhere like Tanzania, for example, we were getting emails almost weekly, the US being included in their prayer meetings because the virus had not really impacted some of their communities in the way that they were seeing on the news that it was impacting communities here in the US. So.
Justin, what about the prayer fellowship?
in this time of
Like the
COVID
unity
and
prayer. Are you speaking about like the Unity Prayer Watch?
yes, but also just encouraging us to be more faithful in our prayer life. And where we can't go, we certainly, the prayers could go.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think kind of both directions. Again, it was humbling for me. I mean, throughout the pandemic, and then specifically this week, I received a lot of information or requests from partners as well to ask about the situation in the U.S. and how they could hold us in prayer during these times, and just kind of that connection. I was also on a meeting with other heads of missions of different ecumenical partners this week, and someone put forth the idea that Chris and I will have to put our heads together a little bit on this, but the idea of a virtual mission. So if we're able to gather like this, within the U.S. for Sunday school classes, and that's happening in Peru and wherever it might be, how might we also think about a new frontier of like virtual connection and mission? So not just putting it on pause, but if we were going to do leadership training, can we just Skype in and do some of those classes or connections, or what opportunities might be afforded there, and what possibilities could we live into during this transitional time?
Are you or Chris gonna tell us how things are going in Central America since the storms, and what we can do financially or whatever?
Sure. So I will. I'll bring up some photos right now. I can jump into that. I have some pictures of things that we have funded there. But I mean, I can jump on right away to say that this crisis is going to continue well beyond the two hurricanes that hit in November, just 15 days apart and 15 miles apart on the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua and Honduras. Really, there's food stability issues, and we're working now to send some additional funding to assist with the planting of rice and bean crops specifically. And since those fields were wiped out, that's really where our concern is until those kind of the agricultural efforts can be replenished, because that's obviously rice and beans, for anybody who's traveled to those areas or know folks there, know how important those staples are. And without those crops around. But let me show a couple pictures here. Should we start right here? So just real quickly working through, in addition to or before the hurricane response, we were doing quite a bit of work with COVID relief. And so in Central America specifically, the health centers kind of weren't equipped to handle the respiratory cases that were coming in. So what you're seeing here is boxes of PPE, masks and gloves and gowns, face shields, the oxygen concentrators as well. To instead of ventilators, we were able to send oxygen concentrators, which was was going to be able to be better utilized by the health centers. And we were able to send this, coordinated by that sister Lorena Gray, so Bishop Sam Gray's wife. She's now down in Honduras, but this was her in her basement helping to organize and pack and divide up. We outfitted 54 health centers with this medical equipment. And so it was put on a shipping container from Tampa down to La Ceiba, Honduras, then went by plane to some of these communities, was carried upriver in certain cases, like on boats to get to the different communities, and then even hand carried the last several miles or kilometers to these different health centers. And here is one example of the support being received, and then like the prayer service that was held in thanks and celebration and in support of this being used. So you can see the oxygen concentrators and different things being put to use. And so hopefully, even as COVID has now moved kind of terribly and quickly through some of these communities, and we're hoping for not kind of a second wave there, this medical equipment can continue to be used into the future. And specifically at the AWIS clinic, where here you can see Dr. Kenneth Serapio, the surgeon at the AWIS clinic, and another staff member, and here, the director of the clinic on the left, Ted Reven, and some other staff using the gowns and PPE equipment that was sent along. Now, the Moravian disaster response work throughout December has been heavily focused on our relief efforts following Hurricanes Eta and Iota, which hit last fall, as I had said. And then if you were following the news at all and you knew where Moravians lived in Honduras and Nicaragua, like the concentrations along the coast, you could have imagined that there was a target drawn and both of these storms hit a bullseye. So you can see there's some, homes, a lot of roofs, the wind damage that went through. This is Dr. Kenneth, went back to his home in Nicaragua to check on it. And you can see the damage that was there. And he had quite a well-constructed home. But there were whole communities of people that had to be evacuated out, and specifically along the coast. There's a video, I couldn't get it to work in this presentation, of a community called All Over. And really the only thing that was left was the Moravian steeple in the town because of the flooding and the rivers that came in. I mean, it kind of decimated it. And the government was advising that folks don't even try and return and rebuild because there didn't seem to be enough to even start building. That'll be up to the community to kind of decide that, but the kind of complete devastation. I do want to say though, as we move forward, just kind of the hope that remains in Springs Eternal here. So this is a Moravian congregation. Like you can see what happened to their church building and pulled over. And here's somebody that quickly went and put the cross back on top as a reminder of that they'll start there and they'll rebuild, and that they have the faith in from the support that they're receiving from so many Moravians around the world to continue this work. We've been able to send funding to both Honduras and Nicaragua, and both the Mission Province and Unity Province in Honduras twice. And we'll likely be sending a third round later this spring. Early on, the large concerns were clean water and food security, and some of those continue. You can see here meals being distributed that were handed out after the funding had been sent, so in communities and children being fed. Here's additional meal packs through an organization called Feed the Hungry. We were able to get several thousand meals. That's what's packed in there. And some of you may have even done that volunteering, where you fill with like a scoop of rice and a scoop of it's like a vitamin mixture and other proteins and natural things that are in there. Those meals being able to be distributed. And this is when they arrived in Awas and then got shipped out to local communities. In Nicaragua, we worked with Habitat for Humanity and Missionary Air Group. So you can see on the ground there, these are hygiene packs, and they included water sanitation packs as well for folks to try and clean out some of the wells that when the flooding happened and pushed both animal waste and other things from the ground into the wells that weren't safe to drink. To do this as a stopgap measure for some time. And Habitat for Humanity had these packs in Managua, Nicaragua. Missionary Air Group was doing flights, and thanks to Brother Rick Nelson, who helped coordinate these efforts, was able to pack together, here's the materials, here's the transportation, and get it to the Moravian leadership in Puerto Cabezas to distribute to communities along the coast. And we received more photos like this of food aid that was distributed, folks that went door to door to shut-ins and where they could go. An additional pictures of just kind of like the food being distributed and making sure that, and children especially during this time, making sure they got their nutritional needs met. On top of this, there was, this is more of the stuff that was sent by Missionary Air Group and members of the provincial board and leadership of youth teams and the social service organization ADSEAM coming together to receive the work. And then going out basically door to door. This was well cleaning equipment that was sent, so helping to buy one pump, and we're going to be investing more in Honduras and Nicaragua into further equipment to help with this. So essentially, to get in a well, you go and you have to pump it out, and then you essentially need to go somebody in there and bleach the sides of it, and there's a whole process to making sure that it's clean enough and the water is treated. And there's specifically young adult youth teams that are going around helping to do this work. And not all of them are quite this young, but you can see this young boy who was also eager to help in the process as well in Nicaragua. Like I said, this will continue for us. If you'd like to help support this work, donations to the Border World Mission marked for our Moravian Disaster Response or MDR program will go to continuing to support these pieces. We've raised some specific funds for the planting, the purchase of seeds of both rice and beans to help get those crops back in the ground for longer term pieces. The well equipment here, continuing with food security, and then of course long term it's going to be about rebuilding the homes, putting the tin back on roofs of structures that were still standing, and then church buildings as well. So this isn't going to be a short term quick response, but there's some things that can be helped now for communities and as they get stabilized again, longer term needs. So again, any donation to the Border World Mission and the Moravian Disaster Response Program, and that can be found on our website, moravianmission.org. And we can bring further along or drop that in the chat box as well, and in subsequent weeks give some more information on the giving pieces there. I do want to hit on just a few non-disaster related programs as well. We continue, as I mentioned, in Tanzania. The work kind of continues there, and our partner, the Moravian Church in Western Tanzania, that province. Here's a picture of a structure that they helped build in a new church with the Sakuma people. So this is in Western Tanzania. It's reaching out to another indigenous group there, and that's our partnership helps support the folks and the missionaries from that province who are doing the day in and day out work of teaching and offering pastoral leadership and growing the congregations in that area. We also partner, the man on the left is Jens Peter, and he is my equivalent for the board of Danish mission, so BDM, like out of Denmark. And so we partner with them quite often on projects in places like Tanzania, and this was a project supported in part by the Border World Mission for the expansion of the Tabora Health Clinic. And here the head of the province, Bishop Ezekiel Yona, they're doing a ribbon cutting. I wasn't able to be there for that ceremonial ribbon cutting. But just a reminder of projects that are continuing and supported by the Board of World Mission. In leadership development and theological education, this is Brother Eloy Ramirez from the Unity Province in Honduras. And he was a pastor. We've been helping to support. This was the final year of getting his advanced degree in theology so that he can come back and teach at the Bible Institute run by the Honduran Unity Province. So that pastors can be trained right there in more local context in Puerto Lempira, and then he's able to be a professor teaching in that area. So investing in this individual so he can come back and invest in numerous others in pastoral training. And then as we get near the end here, this is in Sierra Leone, which is a mission area under the supervision of the Southern Province, and the Board of World Mission helps facilitate that. As I mentioned earlier, in February of 2020, Sam Gray and I were able to accompany, David Guthrie was there as well, and then the Unity Business Administrator, Unity Board Administrator, Jorn Beutler, to take part in the first national conference of the Moravian Church in Sierra Leone, where they elected a governing board and a committee to help set up the formalization of their book of order and their connection, and then Sister Safi Brima sitting there in the front row, right next to the man holding the flag there, who continues to be the missionary liaison and helping to guide this wonderful work. It's a wonderful thing when you can, here's the board that was elected there, and it represents the 5 congregations in the area continuing to grow, and just another step towards developing their own governance, and then towards the pastoral leadership and training. That'll be the focus of the next visit of the Board of World Mission. But in addition to the church growth, this is one place where Moravians really have a big stamp on the community. And this is the Moravian Secondary School that as of February had 515 students. And now it was shut down a bit during the coronavirus pandemic. And this was actually a time where the virus wasn't really present in the community. They were able to use that to help build some additional classrooms and additional housing for teachers and things the school needed, because it's become so popular that it is now continuing just to expand. And there's more students that want to come than they had space to accommodate at the time. And a desire of this project, this for me is a reminder of, this started with a junior secondary school. So the elementary school, middle school kids, And every year they would try and add on enough classrooms, enough teachers, enough programs to help get that first class all the way through to graduation. And that's been accomplished. And now a dream remains to build a university, a Moravian university in this community in Sierra Leone. And so taking that to me is just a reminder of when we think of the things that we're called to do, the great things, the Great Commission in this case, that it wasn't just to be present there, but recognizing all that their neighbors needed and then continuing forward. So it would have been a large goal at the time to have one school, to have an elementary school, for younger kids, and then to grow it to be a high school and the challenges that presented. But just the idea now of the dream that continues to make a Moravian university. And I would love to be back talking again at this class in 5 years and be able to have my next slide be of the Moravian university in this place as well. So I realize that's a whirlwind of things in 45 minutes, and I'm glad that Chris will be able to be with you over the next few weeks as well to kind of continue to talk more about this work, the state of missions, the biblical foundations and things. But I guess I would like to just pause there. I know we're already at the top of the hour. Just any questions at all about the Board of World Mission that we could answer over here, or other things you'd like to know, or things that we can expand on in future weeks. And that's me delegating to Chris, I guess, as he'll be guiding you. So he's the one that could take the notes on that.
Justin, we thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's wonderful to see some of the people we've met along the way, like in Sierra Leone, and to see the work in Honduras and the necessity of the people of Honduras really taking over what we send to them because of where we are today. And so we thank you very much for being with us today. Tell your mom I said hello.
I will.
I served with his mother on the Provincial Women's Board. So she's still there. I'm not, but anyway, she's there. Chris, it's nice to see you. We look forward to next week with you. I tell those of you who are participating, the same Zoom numbers will be the same for every week. So if you will hang on to those, I'll send them out again at the end of the week. Do you have any questions or comments?
Justin? Justin, I had one question. In the past, when we've had these hurricanes, there's been a real problem with saltwater invasion of crop areas. Is that the case this time as well? Are they dealing with that, or how?
So that's, I'll be interested to hear more about that. We're doing some of those assessments, like the agricultural assessments on things. I was actually wondering that as well, because we know that the flood waters, a lot of it as it drained, the inland areas were impacted weeks later, right? As the salinated water went down and flooded these other areas. And so beyond washing out the crops, I kind of had that concern as well of how well some things would grow in what had been fertile land before. So unfortunately, all I can say is, like, I think it's a little too soon to tell. I haven't heard of those full soil assessments being done in some of these areas, but I would imagine that will continue to be a problem and lowering crop yields, especially this year and maybe in a few years to come in some of these areas, especially close to the coast.
Well, that was one of the things that was contributing to the slash and burn movement that was going on when I was involved back in early 2000. A lot more property or land was being made available simply because of necessity, and unfortunately that contributes to the deforestation and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I would just like to say hello. This is Chris, and I will be with you all the next 3 weeks. And next week we'll look a bit more. We've looked at a bit about what's happening now. We'll take a bit of time next week to look back at our Moravian heritage and and how it speaks to us again even today. So that's what's on tap for next week.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. And so any other questions or things that you would like to hear before we wrap this series up later in the month?
I would just like to ask if the Moravian Church is unique in having an organization that serves missions.
So it's interesting. So I would say no in the idea of like having a focus on mission, or having some staff intentionally focused or towards it. I think what's unique as I meet with our partners of other ecumenical organizations is our polity in the way that we're connected. So a lot of times, like the Lutheran Church, for example, it was a distinct Lutheran body in another country and how they would connect. We really consider ourselves part of one unity together, kind of our conferential system, the connections there. So the way in which we interact and have such a strong relationship, like those baptismal covenants that I talked about of supervising areas and things like that's not a model that I'm really aware of at that kind of administrative level. Like certainly other places have sister congregations or like, more individualized relationships. But I think that's one of our strengths in this church, because when we say, a hurricane hit Honduras or Nicaragua, we have such a long history that's continued there of, Chris lived in Nicaragua growing up as well. And one of the slides I didn't put in that Rick Nelson had given me was, the roof had blown off of it. He described it as Bishop Chris's school. His connection, certainly it was the John Amos Comenius School in Puerto Cabezas. But our kind of organization, the way we're organized, allows us to, on a very close and intimate level, like have that mutual relationship and connection in a way that I haven't seen in some other organizations and how they function.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Graham, would you lead us in a closing prayer?
Certainly. Gracious God, you have given to us as a Moravian Church a special charge to mission. We have accepted that charge, and we thank you for those who are carrying out our work in these days. We're thankful for our worldwide ties, and we pray that you would use those to keep us strong as we seek to meet the needs of people in the areas where we are. We thank you for this opportunity we have in these weeks to come, and we pray for your leading those who will be with us to keep us informed about what is going on and how we can participate. May these be weeks of blessing for us and for our church and its outreach. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Be safe, everybody. Stay home, wear a mask, whatever. Anyway, that's what we do a lot of these days.